Captain Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora's Hope and watched his world fall apart. Red lights flashed everywhere. Alarms screamed through the corridors. Behind him, he could hear people crying, families, children, 12,000 souls who trusted him to get them safely to their new home. "Captain, they're coming around for another pass," Kyle Harper said from the communications station. His voice was steady, but his hands shook as he gripped the console. Jack looked at the screens showing the enemy ships. 30 vessels surrounded them like wolves circling wounded prey. The Krellin swarm had found them 3 hours into their jump through empty space. The pirates were famous across the galaxy for one thing: they never left survivors. "How long until life support fails?" Jack asked. 4 hours. "Maybe 5, answered Megan Clark from her medical station. She was supposed to be down in the medical bay, but every officer was needed on the bridge now. "The children's section is already getting cold. I need to move them soon." Jack closed his eyes. Children. 2,000 children on this ship, some as young as 2 years old. Families who sold everything they owned for a chance at a new life on a colony world, and now they would die in the black emptiness of space because he couldn't protect them. "Sir, they're hailing us again," Kyle said. "Put them through." The Krellin commander appeared on screen. His face was covered in dark scales, and his eyes were yellow and cold. "Human captain, your ship is finished. Open your cargo bays and give us everything of value. Maybe we let some of you live." Jack knew it was a lie. The Krellins never left witnesses. But he had to buy time. Time for what? He didn't know. They were 6 days from the nearest human outpost. No one could reach them in time. "We need time to organize the cargo transfer," Jack said, trying to keep his voice calm. The Krellin laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You have 1 hour. Then we board your ship and take everything anyway, including the females and young ones. They sell for good prices." The screen went black. Megan grabbed Jack's arm. "We can't let them take the children. We can't." "I know," Jack said quietly. He looked around the bridge at his crew. Good people. Brave people. "Kyle, send out a distress signal. Maximum range. Every frequency we have." "Sir, the nearest help is days away. We don't have days." "I know. Send it anyway. Someone needs to know what happened here. Someone needs to know we tried." Kyle nodded and turned to his station. His fingers flew across the controls, setting up the broadcast. Jack walked to the back of the bridge where a window showed the vast emptiness of space. So much darkness, so much silence. Humanity had reached the stars only to find they were still very small and very alone. "Signal is ready, sir," Kyle said. "What should I say?" Jack thought for a moment. "What do you say when you're about to die? What words matter when no help can come in time?" "This is Captain Jack Morrison of the colony ship Aurora's Hope. We are under attack by Krellin pirates. Our weapons are gone. Our engines are failing. We have 12,000 people aboard, including 2,000 children. We have 4 hours before life support fails. We are 6 days from any human station." Jack paused, listening to a child crying somewhere in the ship. The sound cut through him like a knife. "If anyone can hear this, please help us. Please don't let our children die alone in the dark." Kyle sent the message. It raced out into space at the speed of light, spreading in all directions like ripples in a pond. But space was so big, and they were so far from anywhere that mattered. "Now what?" Megan asked. "Now we prepare to fight," Jack said. "Get every able-bodied adult armed with whatever we have. Kitchen knives, tools, pipes, anything. When they board, we make them pay for every meter of corridor." "They'll kill us all," Kyle said softly. "Yes, but maybe we can buy enough time for some of the children to hide. Maybe 1 or 2 can survive long enough to be found. It's all we have left." The bridge crew moved to follow his orders. Jack stood alone at the window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, his message was traveling through the void. Maybe someone was listening. Maybe someone cared. But probably not. The galaxy was a big place, and humanity was new and small and not very important. Far away, at Forward Station Olympus, Admiral Ben Crawford was finishing his daily reports when the distress call came through. He listened to the message once, then played it again, and again. Each time he heard the child crying in the background of Jack Morrison's plea for help. Ben was 60 years old. He had fought in 3 wars. He had sent thousands of men and women to their deaths for Earth. He had made hard choices and lived with the weight of them. But in all his years, he had never heard anything like the sound of that child crying across the vast emptiness of space. "Get me the fleet commanders," he said to his aide. "All of them, right now." "Sir, the Council has already responded to the distress call. They said the Aurora's hope is too far away. They said it's already lost." Ben Crawford looked at his aide with eyes that had seen too much death. "I don't care what the Council said. Get me the fleet commanders. We're going to get those people." "But, sir, we're 6 days away. They only have 4 hours. Then we'll arrive in time to make the bastards who killed them pay. Now move." The aide ran. Ben played the message one more time, listening to that child cry. Somewhere in his chest, something old and fierce woke up. Something that had kept humanity alive through 10,000 years of war and suffering. Something that said no child should die crying in the dark, not while humans with guns and ships still drew breath. He picked up his communicator. "This is Admiral Crawford. To all ships in the Olympus fleet. Plot a course for these coordinates. Maximum speed. We have people who need us." The alien council chamber filled with nervous voices as the representatives gathered. They had all heard the human distress call. They had all heard the crying child. And now they watched their screens in disbelief as 15 human warships broke formation and raced toward certain death. Counselor Threxcar, a being that looked like a tall insect covered in purple armor, raised his voice above the others. "This is madness. The humans cannot possibly reach the colony ship in time. Why do they waste their forces?" "Perhaps they don't understand the distances involved," another counselor suggested. "They are new to space travel. Maybe they think they can help." "They know exactly what they're doing," said Ambassador Lisa Chen, Earth's representative to the Council. She stood calmly while the aliens argued around her. "They know they can't save the Aurora's hope. They know they're probably going to die trying. They're going anyway." "But why?" Threxcar demanded. "It makes no logical sense. The colony ship is lost. Adding more deaths changes nothing." Lisa smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You heard the child crying on that transmission. Every human who heard it felt the same thing. We're going because that's what we do. We don't leave our people behind, especially not children." "This is emotion, not strategy," Threxcar said. "The Krellin swarm has 30 ships. The humans are sending 15. Even if they arrive in time, they will lose." "Probably," Lisa agreed. "But they're going anyway." Aboard the EDS Valiant, Commander Ryan Mitchell pushed his ship beyond safe limits. The engines screamed in protest as he forced them to run at 115% capacity. His crew worked frantically to keep everything from shaking apart. "Sir, if we keep this up, we're going to burn out the engines completely," his chief engineer warned. "Then we burn them out," Ryan said. "How much faster can we go?" "We're already going faster than these ships were designed for. Not fast enough. Find me more speed." Ryan was 32 years old. He had a wife back on Earth and a daughter who was 4 years old. When he heard the distress call, he thought about his little girl. He thought about her crying alone in the dark. The image made his blood run cold. If his daughter was out there, he would want someone to come. He would want someone to try, even if it was hopeless. "Sir, message from Admiral Crawford," his communications officer said. All ships are to push maximum speed. We're not waiting to arrive together. First ship there engages immediately. Understood. How long until we reach them? At this speed, 4 days and 16 hours. Ryan did the math in his head. The Aurora's Hope had 4 hours of life support when they sent the distress call. That was 3 hours ago now. The colonists were already dead or would be very soon, but the Krellans would still be there, picking through the wreckage. "Keep pushing," he ordered. In the fighter bay of the EDS Thunderchild, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez gathered her pilots for a briefing. 24 men and women stood before her, the best fighter pilots in the fleet. They all knew what they were flying toward. "Listen up," Amy said. "We all heard the call. We all know the Aurora's Hope is probably gone by the time we get there. But the Krellans will still be there. 30 ships against our 15. The Admiral says we engage immediately. No waiting, no planning, no careful strategy. We go in hot, and we make them bleed for what they did." "Ma'am, what are our orders if we're outnumbered?" a young pilot asked. "We're always outnumbered," Amy said with a cold smile. "That's why we're better. Human pilots have been fighting and killing each other for hundreds of years. We know things about combat that these aliens never learned. We know how to be mean, how to be cruel, how to make every shot count. The Krellans think they're scary because they kill civilians. They're about to learn what scary really means." The pilots cheered. Amy felt it too, that hot anger in her chest. She was a fighter pilot because she loved to fly, but she had trained for war since she was 18. She knew 100 ways to kill someone in a fighter craft. The Krellans were about to see all of them. Down in the Marine quarters, Sergeant Greg Palmer checked his rifle for the 10th time. Around him, 200 Marines prepared their gear. They were the boarding party, the ones who would go ship to ship if needed. "Think we'll get there in time, Sarge?" a young Marine asked. "No," Greg said honestly. "But we'll get there in time to make the bastards pay. That's enough." Greg was 45 years old. He had been a Marine for 27 years. He had fought on 6 worlds and killed more people than he cared to count. War was his life, but this felt different. The Krellans had killed families. They had killed children. That was a line you didn't cross, not in any war Greg had ever fought. "Load everything," he ordered. "Heavy weapons, breaching charges, everything. When we board those Krellan ships, I want us to go through them like a chainsaw. No prisoners, no mercy. They wanted to be pirates. We'll show them what happens when you prey on humans." The Marines worked in grim silence. They all felt it. This wasn't just another mission. This was personal. Admiral Ben Crawford stood on the bridge of the Thunderchild and watched the fleet status reports. All 15 ships were pushing beyond safe limits. Engines were overheating. Crews were exhausted from the constant repairs. But no one complained. No one asked to slow down. "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from the Krellan swarm," his communications officer said. "They're demanding we turn back. They say the Aurora's Hope is their prize by right of conquest." "Send them a message," Ben said quietly. "Tell them this. Release any survivors and leave immediately, or we will show them why Earth has never lost a war. Sir, they outnumber us 2-1. "I know. Send the message anyway." The message was sent. Hours later, a response came back. It was a video. The Krellan commander stood on what was clearly the bridge of the Aurora's Hope. Bodies lay on the floor around him, human bodies. He smiled at the camera with his mouth full of sharp teeth. "This is what happens to humans who cry for help," the Krellan said. "This is what happens to your weak little species. Turn back, or we will do the same to you." The bridge of the Thunderchild fell silent. Every officer stared at the screen. Ben felt something cold settle into his bones. He had seen a lot of death in his career, but this was different. This was murder. This was evil. "Send another message," Ben said, and his voice was like ice. "Tell them we're coming. Tell them we don't negotiate with people who kill children. Tell them they have made the worst mistake of their short, brutal lives. And tell them that when we arrive, we will not stop until every single one of their ships is debris floating in space." The message was sent. The Krellin commander laughed when he received it. He laughed because he had 30 ships and the humans only had 15. He laughed because he had never fought humans before and didn't know what they were capable of. He laughed because he thought he was safe. He would not laugh for much longer. The EDS Valiant arrived first, dropping out of faster-than-light travel right into the middle of the Krellin fleet. Commander Ryan Mitchell didn't wait for backup. He didn't call for negotiations. He simply opened fire with every weapon his ship had. "All batteries target the nearest ships," Ryan ordered. "Helm, evasive pattern Delta. Don't let them get a clean shot at us." The Valiant was a destroyer, fast and deadly. It danced between the larger Krellin vessels, firing missiles and energy weapons as it went. 3 Krellin ships exploded in the first 30 seconds. The rest scattered in confusion, trying to understand what was happening. "Sir, we're picking up the Aurora's Hope," his sensor officer reported. "It's dead in space. Life support is gone. I'm not reading any life signs." Ryan felt his jaw tighten. They were too late. Everyone was dead. But that didn't change what had to be done now. "Mark every Krellin ship on sensors," he ordered. "When the fleet arrives, I want targets assigned instantly. These bastards are going to pay." The Krellin commander aboard his flagship couldn't believe what he was seeing. 1 human ship had attacked his entire fleet. 1 ship against 30. It was suicide. It was madness. But somehow, the human ship was still fighting, still moving, still killing his vessels. "All ships, focus fire on that destroyer," he ordered. "Kill it now." 10 Krellin ships turned toward the Valiant, their weapons charging. Ryan saw them coming. "Helm, full speed toward the Aurora's Hope. Use it as cover." "Sir, that's a civilian ship. There might be survivors." "There aren't. Sensors confirmed it. Move now." The Valiant raced toward the dead colony ship with 10 enemy vessels in pursuit. Just as the Krellins opened fire, the rest of the human fleet arrived. 14 warships dropped into normal space in perfect formation. Admiral Ben Crawford saw the situation instantly and didn't hesitate. "All ships, weapons free, kill everything that isn't human. Amy, launch all fighters. Greg, prepare for boarding operations. Let's show them what happens when they make us angry." The space around the Aurora's Hope exploded into chaos. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez launched from the Thunderchild with her 24 fighters behind her. The Krellin fleet had maybe 60 fighter craft of their own. The aliens probably thought that gave them an advantage. They were wrong. "All wings, pair up and hunt," Amy ordered. "Remember your training. We're faster, meaner, and better than they are. Prove it." Human fighters had been designed by people who understood war. They were small and quick, covered in weapons, and flown by pilots who trained constantly for combat. The Krellin fighters were built for raiding defenseless merchants, not for real battle. The difference showed immediately. Amy locked onto a Krellin fighter and fired. Her missiles tracked perfectly, dodging the aliens' clumsy attempts to evade. The Krellin craft exploded. She immediately turned toward another target. Fire, turn, fire again. Each movement was precise and deadly. Around her, her pilots did the same. "This is Chris Bennett," one of her pilots called over the radio. "I'm at 6 kills. Who's ahead?" "Focus on fighting, not counting," Amy snapped, but she smiled despite herself. Pilots never changed. "But I'm at 8, so you've got work to do." The Krellin fighters started to panic. They had never faced opponents like this. Every human pilot seemed to know exactly where to shoot, exactly when to turn, exactly how to kill efficiently. Within 10 minutes, 40 of the 60 Krellin fighters were destroyed. The rest tried to flee. "Let them run," Amy ordered. "Focus on supporting the capital ships." The larger battle was brutal. The human warships moved in patterns the Krellins had never seen before. They would concentrate fire on a single target until it exploded, then immediately shift to the next. They used nuclear missiles that turned Krellin shields into useless garbage. They fired kinetic weapons that punched through hulls like paper. Commander Ryan Mitchell brought the Valiant alongside a Krellin cruiser and fired every weapon directly into its engine section. The enemy ship broke in half, spilling bodies and debris into space. He didn't stop. He didn't slow down. There were still 27 enemy ships left. "Sir, we're taking heavy damage," his engineer reported. "Shields are at 30%. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 5. Keep firing. We're not done yet." Aboard the Thunderchild, Admiral Ben Crawford watched the battle unfold. His ships were winning, but the cost was high. 3 human destroyers were already crippled. 2 more were heavily damaged. The Krellins had numbers, and numbers mattered in space combat. "Get me Sergeant Palmer," he ordered. Greg Palmer's face appeared on screen. Behind him, Marines were loading into boarding craft. "Sir, the Krellin flagship is wounded but still fighting. I want you to take it. Board that ship and kill everyone aboard. Start with the commander. I want him to know we're coming before he dies." Greg Palmer smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "With pleasure, Admiral." 6 boarding craft launched from the Thunderchild. They were small and fast, designed to attach to enemy ships and burn through the hulls. The Krellins tried to shoot them down, but Amy Rodriguez's fighters provided cover, destroying any weapon that targeted the boarding craft. The craft attached to the Krellin flagship with metallic crunches. Cutting torches activated, burning through the alien hull. Sergeant Greg Palmer was first through the breach, his rifle up and ready. The Krellin crew tried to stop them. They failed. Human Marines had been fighting wars for centuries. They knew how to move through tight corridors. They knew how to clear rooms. They knew how to kill quickly and efficiently in close quarters. The Krellins were pirates who bullied defenseless merchants. They weren't warriors. Greg and his Marines went through the ship like a storm. Any Krellin who raised a weapon died instantly. Any who tried to flee died anyway. There was no mercy here. These creatures had murdered families. They had killed children. They deserved no quarter. "Bridge is ahead," one of his Marines reported. "Blow the door," Greg ordered. A breaching charge exploded, and the Marines poured through. The Krellin commander stood in the center of his bridge, surrounded by his officers. He raised his weapon, but Greg shot it out of his hand. "You wanted to be a tough guy," Greg said quietly, walking toward the alien. "You wanted to kill humans and make yourself feel powerful. Well, here we are. What do you think now?" The Krellin commander looked at the human Marine with growing fear. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be easy prey. "Please," the Krellin said, "we can negotiate. We have wealth, resources. Anything you want." "You killed children," Greg said. "There's nothing you have that I want except your life." He pulled the trigger. Outside the ship, the battle was ending. Of the 30 Krellin vessels, only 5 remained, and they were trying desperately to escape. Commander Ryan Mitchell pursued one in his damaged destroyer. "Sir, let them go," his crew begged. "We're falling apart. We need to stop." "Not yet," Ryan said. He pushed the engines one more time, gaining on the fleeing Krellin ship. When he was close enough, he fired his last missiles. The Krellin ship exploded. Ryan's ship finally gave up. The engines died. Systems shut down across the destroyer. But Ryan smiled. He had done enough. Admiral Ben Crawford watched as the last 2 Krellin ships jumped away into faster-than-light travel. He could have pursued them. He could have sent fighters after them, but he didn't. Let them run. Let them tell others what happened here. "All ships, cease fire," he ordered. "Damage reports, casualty counts, and someone check the Aurora's Hope. Make absolutely certain there are no survivors." The reports came in slowly. 3 human ships destroyed completely. 6 more heavily damaged and barely functional. 4,000 Marines and crew dead or wounded. It was a terrible price, but 30 Krellin ships had attacked the Aurora's Hope. Only 2 escaped. Every pirate who killed those colonists had paid with their life. "Admiral, we have something," the censor officer suddenly called out. "I'm reading faint life signs on the Aurora's Hope. Very faint. It might be sensor ghosts, but—" Ben Crawford stood up straight. "Get medical teams over there immediately. If there's even one person alive, I want them found. Move now." The entire human fleet suddenly had a new mission. Dr. Megan Clark opened her eyes slowly. Everything hurt. Her head pounded. Her lungs burned. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was or what had happened. Then it came back. The attack. The Krellins boarding the ship. Captain Morrison ordering everyone to the emergency shelters. The sound of gunfire. The cold as life support failed. She had gathered as many children as she could find into the medical bay's emergency chamber, a reinforced room designed to hold atmosphere even if the rest of the ship failed. There were 27 children with her. They had huddled together in the dark, trying to stay warm, trying to breathe as the air grew thin. She must have passed out. They all must have. And now someone was shaking her shoulder. "Ma'am, can you hear me? Ma'am?" Megan forced her eyes to focus. A man in a military uniform knelt beside her. Human military. Behind him, more soldiers were checking the children, giving them oxygen masks. "The children," Megan croaked. "Are they—" "They're alive," the soldier said gently. "All 27. You saved them. You and Captain Morrison. He put everyone in emergency chambers before the Krellins could reach them. The chambers kept enough air to keep people alive, barely." Megan started to cry. She couldn't help it. How many survived?" The soldier's face became serious. "We've found 347 people alive so far. Most are children. Captain Morrison kept them safe as long as he could. Jack? Is Jack alive?" "Yes, ma'am. He's on the bridge. Unconscious, but alive. We're transporting everyone to the fleet medical ships. You're safe now. The Krellins are gone." "Gone where?" The soldier smiled coldly. "Dead, mostly. A few escaped to tell others what happens when you attack humans." Over the next hours, the human fleet worked frantically to evacuate the Aurora's Hope. 347 survivors out of 12,000. It was a terrible loss, but it was also 347 people who would have died if the fleet hadn't come. Kyle Harper woke up in a medical bay aboard the Thunderchild. His head was bandaged and his arm was in a cast, but he was alive. A nurse saw him wake and smiled. "Welcome back," she said. "You're one of the lucky ones." "The distress call?" Kyle said weakly. "Did anyone hear it?" "We heard it," said a voice from the doorway. Admiral Ben Crawford walked in. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes, but there was satisfaction in his expression. "Your message reached us. We came as fast as we could." "You came," Kyle repeated, as if he couldn't quite believe it. "You actually came." "Of course we came. You called for help. You told us children were in danger. What else would we do?" Kyle started crying. He had sent that distress call thinking no one would respond, thinking he and everyone he knew would die alone in the dark. But they had come. Humans had crossed impossible distances at impossible speeds because someone called for help. "Thank you," Kyle whispered. "Thank you." Ben squeezed his shoulder gently. "Rest. You have a long recovery ahead. But you're safe now." As the survivors were stabilized, word of the battle spread across the galaxy. The aliens who monitored that region of space couldn't believe what they were seeing. Humans had fought with a ferocity and skill that shocked everyone. The Krellin swarm, which had terrorized merchants and colonies for decades, had been nearly wiped out in a few hours. Counselor Threx Carr called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from 40 species gathered to discuss what had happened. "The humans fought like demons," one counselor said, reviewing battle recordings. "They used tactics we've never seen, weapons we didn't know they possessed. They destroyed a fleet twice their size." "They took terrible losses," another pointed out. 3 ships completely destroyed, thousands dead. They won, but barely. "They shouldn't have won at all," Threxakar said. "By all logical calculation, they should have lost. The Krellans had superior numbers and position, but the humans didn't care about logic. They cared about rescuing their people." Ambassador Lisa Chen sat quietly through the discussion, watching the alien counselors argue and analyze. Finally, she spoke. "You're missing the point," she said. All eyes turned to her. "You're analyzing tactics and weapons and casualty ratios, but that's not why we won." "Then why did you win?" Threxakar asked. "Because we heard a child crying," Lisa said simply. "Every human who heard that distress call felt the same thing. Not logic, not strategy, just the absolute certainty that we had to help. That's not a weakness, it's our strength." "It's emotion," Threxakar protested. "Emotion is inefficient, illogical." "Maybe," Lisa agreed, "but it's also what makes us human. And I'll tell you something else. This will happen again. Anytime someone calls for help, anytime we hear that someone is in danger, humans will come. It doesn't matter if it's logical. It doesn't matter if the odds are bad. We will come." The council chamber fell silent. The aliens looked at each other, understanding dawning on their faces. Earth had just announced itself as a power that would fight for others, not just for itself. A power that would risk everything for strangers simply because they called for help. It changed everything. Within days, 7 different species sent diplomatic requests to Earth. They wanted alliances, defense pacts, mutual aid agreements. Everyone suddenly understood that having humans as friends was valuable. Having them as enemies was terrifying. The Krellan swarm collapsed completely. The few surviving pirates scattered across the galaxy, but they all carried the same message. Stay away from humans. Don't attack their ships. Don't threaten their people. Because humans don't negotiate. They don't accept losses. They come for their people no matter what the cost. Piracy in human space dropped to 0 almost overnight. Criminals and raiders gave human ships a wide berth. The risk was too high. Aboard the Thunderchild, Captain Jack Morrison finally woke up. He found himself in a medical bed surrounded by monitors. Admiral Crawford sat in a chair nearby, reading reports. "Admiral?" Jack said weakly. Ben looked up and smiled. "Captain Morrison, good to see you awake. How do you feel?" "Like I was hit by a ship. What happened?" "The Krellans are dead. We arrived 4 days after your distress call. We were too late to save most of your people, but we saved 347, including you." Jack closed his eyes. 347 out of 12,000. The math was brutal. But they were alive because this man and his fleet had come. "You crossed 6 days of space in 4 days," Jack said quietly. "You must have nearly destroyed your ships to do that." "We did," Ben agreed. 3 ships are total losses. 6 more will need months of repairs. We lost 4,000 crew, but we saved your people. That's what matters." "Why?" Jack asked. "Why risk so much for people you didn't know?" Ben was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out a recording device and played the distress call. Jack's own voice filled the room, desperate and afraid. And in the background, a child crying. "That's why," Ben said. "We heard that and knew we had no choice. You're human. The colonists were human. And humans don't abandon their own, not ever." Jack Morrison understood then. He understood what it meant to be part of humanity. Not just a species, but a family. A family that would cross impossible distances and fight impossible battles because someone needed help. "Thank you," he said. "Thank yourself," Ben replied. "You kept those people alive until we could reach them. You're the hero here, Captain." But Jack knew better. The heroes were the thousands who died fighting to save strangers. The heroes were the fleet that pushed their ships beyond breaking to answer a cry for help. The heroes were every human who heard that distress call and knew instantly and absolutely that they had to respond. 5 years after the battle, the Aurora colony thrived on its new world. The 347 survivors had been joined by 20,000 new colonists who came to build something in memory of those who died. The colony became a symbol across human space, a reminder of what humanity would sacrifice for its own. Captain Jack Morrison stood at the memorial looking at the wall of names. 11,653 people who died when the Krellans attacked. He came here every week, standing in silence before the wall. He knew every name. He remembered every face. "You still come here," a voice said behind him. Jack turned to see Admiral Ben Crawford walking up the path. The Admiral was older now, with more gray in his hair, but he still carried himself with the same quiet strength. "I'll always come here," Jack said. "These people trusted me to protect them. I failed." "You saved 347 lives," Ben said firmly. "Don't forget that. If you hadn't acted so quickly, getting people into emergency shelters, no one would have survived. Not one person." Jack knew it was true, but it didn't make the loss easier. They stood together in silence, looking at the names carved into the stone. "I came to tell you something," Ben said eventually. "The Galactic Council wants to give you an award. They're calling you a hero." "I don't want their award." "I know, but you should hear what else they're doing. They're creating a new law called the Aurora Protocol. Any ship that sends a distress call must be helped by any vessel that can reach them. Any species that ignores a distress call will face sanctions from the entire Council." Jack looked at Ben in surprise. "They're actually doing that?" "They are, because of what happened here. Because humanity showed them that saving lives matters more than calculations and risk assessments. Other species are starting to understand, slowly, but they're learning." "And what about Earth? What happened to the fleet?" Ben smiled. "Earth promoted me to Supreme Commander. We've built 20 new ships to replace the ones we lost, and we've established something called the Rapid Response Force. 15 ships on constant patrol, ready to answer any distress call within their range. We're calling it the Crawford Protocol." "You named it after yourself?" "The government did. I tried to stop them," Ben said with a slight embarrassment. "But the name stuck. The point is, we're making sure what happened to the Aurora's Hope never happens again. If someone calls for help, humans will answer. Always." Jack nodded slowly. "The galaxy must be nervous about that. About humans building up military forces. They are. Some of them, anyway. But 7 species have signed defense treaties with us. They'd rather have us as allies than worry about us as potential enemies. And the criminal element? They avoid human space completely now. Pirates, raiders, slavers, they all know to stay far away from our ships. Because of one battle. Because of what that battle showed them," Ben corrected. "It showed them that humans fight differently. We don't just fight for territory or resources. We fight for each other. We fight for strangers if they need help. That makes us dangerous in a way most species don't understand." Kyle Harper walked up the path to join them. He worked as the colony's chief communications officer now. His arm had healed, though he still had scars from the attack. "Admiral Crawford," Kyle said with a smile. "Didn't know you were visiting. Just came to see how the colony is doing, and to talk to Jack about the council ceremony." "Are you going?" Kyle asked Jack. "I don't know." "You should," Kyle said. "Not for yourself, but for them." He pointed to the memorial wall. "Let the galaxy see what they died for. Let everyone understand why humans answered the call." Megan Clark approached with a group of children. She ran the colony's school now, teaching the children who had survived and the new children born on the colony world. When the kids saw Admiral Crawford, they ran to him excitedly. "Admiral, are you flying ships today?" one little girl asked. "Not today," Ben said, kneeling down to talk to her. "But my ships are up there watching, making sure you're all safe." "Because you heard us crying," the girl said seriously. "My mom says you came because you heard children crying and couldn't leave us." Ben felt his throat tighten. This girl had been 2 years old when the Krellins attacked. She had been one of the 27 children Megan saved in the medical bay. Now she was 7, healthy and happy and alive, because thousands of people fought and died for her. "That's right," Ben said gently. "We heard you, and we came. We'll always come." The girl hugged him, then ran off with her friends. Megan watched them go with tears in her eyes. "They don't really understand what you all did," she said. "They're too young, but they will someday. They'll understand that they're alive because strangers refused to let them die." 2 weeks later, Captain Jack Morrison stood before the Galactic Council. The chamber was full, every species represented. They all wanted to see the human who survived the Krellin attack. Ambassador Lisa Chen introduced him. "This is Captain Jack Morrison of the Aurora's Hope. He kept his people alive against impossible odds, and he sent the distress call that changed the galaxy." Counselor Threxkar stepped forward with a medal. "Captain Morrison, the Galactic Council honors you for your courage and quick thinking. You saved lives through your actions." Jack accepted the medal but didn't put it on. Instead, he held it in his hand and looked around the chamber. "I didn't save anyone," he said quietly. "My people died. 11,000 people who trusted me. Children who will never grow up. Families destroyed. I failed them." The council members shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the speech they expected. "But I learned something that day," Jack continued. "I learned what it means to be human. Not just the species, but the idea. I sent a distress call thinking no one would come, thinking we would die alone. But humans came. They pushed their ships beyond breaking. They fought against terrible odds. 4,000 of them died to save 347 of us. That math doesn't make sense to most of you. But it makes sense to humans." He looked at Threxkar directly. "You asked Ambassador Chen why we won that battle. She told you it was because we heard a child crying. That's true. But it's more than that. It's because humans believe some things are more important than survival. Honor is more important. Protecting the innocent is more important. Making sure no one dies alone in the dark is more important." Jack held up the medal. "I accept this on behalf of every human who died saving my people. I accept it for the Marines who boarded enemy ships knowing they might not come back. For the pilots who fought outnumbered and kept fighting. For the crews who pushed their engines until they broke. For Admiral Crawford who gave the order to come even though every logical calculation said we would fail." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You want to know what makes humans different? It's not our weapons. It's not our tactics. It's that we refuse to accept that some people are acceptable losses. Every life matters. Every child crying in the dark matters. And we will cross any distance, pay any price, to make sure no one is abandoned. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us strong." The chamber was completely silent when he finished. Then, slowly, one by one, the alien counselors stood. It started with Ambassador Chen, then spread to others. Soon the entire council was standing, acknowledging not just Jack Morrison, but everything humanity had proven that day. Later, Jack stood with Ben Crawford looking out at Earth from a station window. The blue planet turned slowly below them, beautiful and peaceful. "Did I say the right things?" Jack asked. "You said what needed to be said," Ben replied. "The galaxy needed to understand. Not just that we'll fight, but why we fight. Do you think it will make a difference? It already has. We're getting requests for help from species that would never have asked before. They're starting to believe that if they're in trouble, humans will come. And more importantly, our own people believe it. Every human in space knows that if they send a distress call, the fleet will answer, no matter what. Jack thought about the children on Aurora Colony, growing up safe and protected. He thought about the 11,000 who died, but were not forgotten. He thought about the future humanity was building among the stars. The cry that brought the strength of Earth's military, he said softly. That's what they're calling it now. The historians, the news services, like it was some great moment in history. It was, Ben said. It was the moment humanity showed the galaxy who we really are. Not conquerors, not traitors, but protectors. People who come when others cry for help. Jack looked down at the medal in his hand, then carefully pinned it to his uniform. Not for himself, but for all of them. For the living and the dead. For everyone who heard that cry and answered it. We'll keep answering, Jack said. It was both a promise and a statement of fact. Always, Ben agreed. Below them, Earth continued its eternal rotation. And around it, human ships patrolled in silence, listening, waiting, ready to answer the next call for help, no matter where it came from or what it might cost. Because that was what humans did. That was what they would always do. In the darkness of space, in the vast silence between stars, that promise echoed outward like a beacon. Help would come. Humanity had made that commitment, written it in the blood of 4,000 who died to save 347. And across the galaxy, species both great and small heard that promise and knew it was true. The cry had brought Earth's strength, and that strength would never falter.